makes it so much easier to pull off. Alternatively, if you're too impatient to wait for the jackpot to rise up, you can just go to school for 6 years to get a degree in mechanical engineering and do it this way. And then even as all 554 sweet, delicious tickets are being added to your account, you can just inconspicuously walk away with your backpack in tow. For our next game, we've got the perennial arcade favorite, air hockey. Now this is the most complicated of all the builds because if you look closely here at the top, there's a hole in the bag for a camera to look out through. Then stripping away the backpack, you can see that camera connects to the brains, and in this case, it's a Raspberry Pi, which is basically like a mini computer instead of just an Arduino microcontroller like all the other builds have used so far. The reason this one needs a bit more brain power is because it uses computer vision to track the puck, and based off the trajectory, it makes a prediction, then sends instructions to rotate this servo, which is attached to an arm that moves the paddle and protects the goal. Nice. And perhaps my favorite part of this build is that it obviously won't work if the whole thing is sliding and moving all around. So we need to anchor it down securely into position, but we need to do that quickly and discreetly. Our solution here is a pair of neodymium toggle magnets. So if you simply turn both of these knobs, the rare earth magnets move into position and anchor it to the steel frame of the air hockey table, and it's basically cemented in place as you can see here. As for the human strategy here, playing air hockey might seem like total chaos, but there are 4 simple tricks that will pretty much guarantee you can beat any casual player. The first is to hold the paddle like this and not like this. Doing that allows you to really whip the paddle around and gain extra speed on your shots. The second is that for your default defensive position, you want your paddle to be out here, not right up against the goal right here. That's because this cuts down the angle and you only have to move the paddle back and forth this far to protect the whole goal versus back and forth this far if you're against the edge. This is the same reason goalies will come out of the goal if there's a breakaway in soccer. Even for a bank shot, you now just have to move the paddle a small distance diagonally back like this. So your paddle should essentially always stay inside a triangle like this when you're playing defense. Now when you watch professionals play, yes, there are air hockey professionals, you will see them employ both these first 2 tips. The third trick you'll also see is they try and play for possession. You want to try and cushion your opponent's shot and gain possession of the puck so you can set up your own shot, which leads to the last tip. Mix up the straight shots and bank shots, but try and practice at least one trick shot like this one where you hit the puck down into the corner and then when it rebounds back to you, you hit the bank shot for the win. Here's what that looks like in action. Now the real benefit of my backpack system is you can be playing your opponent, but then when you get a phone call or you have to attend to some other important matters, your goal is in safe hands. And then at your own leisure, you can eventually just come back and finish things off. Then with the victory securely in hand, you just disengage the 2 toggle magnets with a twist, and you're good to go. And finally, we've got the ultimate test of strength, the punching bag game. Now for this one, to make it more interesting, I wanted to find and challenge the guy in the arcade whose muscles looked the least like mine. So I stepped up first, and rocked a 678 out of a possible 999. But then he stepped up, and rocked an 877. And since that's bigger than 678, the trash talking commenced.
Maybe if you spend a little less time at the computer, a little more time in the weight room.
So that was disappointing, but lucky for me, I had a trick up my sleeve. Like, actually, because that's a fake arm in order to disguise this.
Now who's the one who's still a little inadequate?
It's basically a bionic punching arm powered by 2 spring-loaded pistons. To set the springs, we use a threaded rod and a drill, and once under tension, they're held in place with a quick-release mechanism I can trigger with my finger at the exact moment I want to punch a thing. And I would classify the initial test in the lab as encouraging. Now it's important to note, to play by the rules for this game, there's no side punching, pushing, running, kicking, or headbutting. But you'll notice there's no rule against spring-loaded piston punching gloves. So now that my moment of sheer domination had arrived, I stepped up and rocked an 838, which was less than 877, which was disappointing.
Dang it!
And in hindsight, I should have known it's really hard to compete with the human body in terms of things like punching and throwing, because we're just so efficient with those mechanics, and I have to sacrifice a lot of the speed and momentum of my own arm body system when I'm wearing that heavy wrist-mounted puncher. But you know what? I'm a fighter, and what I lack in muscle mass, I make up for in tenacity. So out of curiosity, I took a closer look to see how the machine actually works. And it turns out it has a beam brake sensor just like the basketball game. So as that odd-shaped metal piece, which is attached to the axle and punching bag, rotates around, the beam has this tiny window to hit the sensor. You can see the sensor in the front view here. So the game cleverly measures how many milliseconds the sensor sees the beam for, and from that, it infers how quickly the bag is rotating on the axle, and therefore how hard it was punched. And this gave me an idea. So I went to the prize counter and redeemed a few of my jackpot tickets I'd been stocking up in exchange for a Pez dispenser. Step 1 was to unwrap and eat some of the Pez, because they're just delicious. And then for step 2, I removed the head and cut the arcade card like this, and then taped it here, and then went and tracked down my new friend. My theory was that if I extended the Pez dispenser and modified card out like this, and then let go, the force of the spring would retract the card, and it would break the beam so fast, the machine would think it was an insanely fast punch. But would it actually work? And it turns out, it absolutely does, because I maxed out the machine. So, yeah. Use this information responsibly, kids. Now, a few years ago, I made a video where I visited the carnival and collected data on all the games and then used physics to expose which carnival games were rigged and then showed how to beat them. So this time around, instead of the carnival, I once again bribed some family friends with unlimited Slurpees in exchange for them collecting a bunch of data at some local arcades. And in addition to uncovering which games were scams, which I'll cover in just a minute, here's what we discovered. For starters, the most popular games in the arcade were the redemption games, as opposed to the experience games. And here's what I mean by that. Redemption games are the games where